So we really wanted to make this video in light of the recent Invincible episodes dropping. I noticed, as well as I'm sure others did, a noticeable decrease in animation quality in terms of like facial and, um, of course, the eyes. All of the animation quality went down. I think there were like some animation standouts when, um, minor spoilers, when Invincible's like fighting like Cecil's bots. There's like some cool animation things, but it's really like nothing like eye capturing. But the stuff that's bad is like horrible. Like the Doc Seismic fight was probably one of the worst things animated I've ever seen in quite a while. And I think there's a lot of reason as to why people are still watching the show. And I think there is a culture where we will watch something for the story, but it can have decent to mildly bad animation, and it doesn't matter as long as the story is there. But the opposite is not true. If something has super good visuals, but there's no story at all, there's nothing to cling on. Yes, maybe it'll hook you in, and you'll like gain an interest. You'll be like, "Oh my god, what's that show? That looks like super cool." But then you start watching the show and realize there's like nothing to it. If it's all like visuals, then nothing really matters. There's no stakes. You know, you're not going to continue to watch that.
Okay, I see what you're saying. And I'm adding on to your Invincible thing. Like the shocking part for me is they have $10 million per episode for a budget. And
I had no idea about that. I was like, if they have $10 million per episode, it's like, what are they? I think they're a pretty small team. I heard they were like 10.
yeah,
I feel like if you have $10 million per episode, why not just hire more animators? I mean, your schedule is obviously being compressed down for the sake of your show is so popular and Amazon is probably like managing you. But why not hire more animators so you can finish these like and hit these deadlines better?
Yep.
And actually like live up to the quality of the comics. And actually like, you know, not just like throw a bunch of famous actors from Breaking Bad in our face and say, "Hey, watch our show."
Hank Schrader and Jesse Pinkman. That is
No, Mike Ehrmantraut.
Hank is not. Yeah, sorry, Mike Ehrmantraut. I hope, because we
Invincible bitch.
I think okay. I think we both know how Invincible season 3 is gonna end. I don't want to mention it here, but I hope those fights get animated good. I truly hope.
Yeah, there's a few fights obviously at the end, but there's like one giant fight, and it's like I'm scared that it's like everybody loves this fight in the comics, and to see it that it's going to be animated is kind of scary because I feel like it's not going to live up to its potential. I would argue the animated version of excuse me, Evans, Omni-Man's fight in animation was better than Omni-Man's fight in the comics. Obviously, definitely the one against Guardians of the Globe, because Guardians of the Globe in the comics is just a frame,
one page,
and then they're dead. But I'm talking about the one against him and Mark in Chicago. There was a lot more emotion, a lot more stakes, a lot more vulnerability, and a lot more, I guess, build up towards it. Like it's the season finale, but in the comics, it's sort of just there, like from the get go.
I think also Invincible kind of has a fallback on its like. It just has an insane story. I think that even if it has this bad story, bad animation, you'll just keep coming back to it. And the comics, like the show is, I think, better than the comics because the show just adds a lot more to it. But in some cases where I think comics, or I guess you can say manga, is just far superior, is like Sakamoto Days, Blue Lock, Bleach. Sakamoto Days is having its anime coming out right now, and like you can just see still frames. People are comparing like still frames from the manga and from the anime. The manga just has insane amounts of detail, and in the still frame in the anime, it's just bad looking, like features, bad looking surroundings. And then Blue Lock was it was called a PDF lock because there was even videos on YouTube. It's like every episode of Blue Lock, and it was just the ball just sliding and stuff like that. And reading the source material for at least manga, because I don't really think comics really do I don't think American animations and movies really do comic accurate stories anymore, other than Invincible, right? Is there anything else like straight up comic accurate?
I'm trying to think.
They're just adaptations. They're not really panel to panel or whatever.
I mean, there's like some DC movies that adapt certain comics. Like I know there was Gotham by Gaslight, but I'm pretty sure even when they do that, they adapt the story differently and change it.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a specific comic. I mean, Invincible's not comic accurate. It has comics, like it's based off the comics, but it's not entirely comic accurate.
Yeah, but I feel like it's more comic accurate than like Marvel movies or DC EU movies and stuff like that. Because
I agree. I'm just saying, it's like when you adapt the source material, there's always certain things that work and certain things that didn't work, and usually the director has their own vision and they come into this with their own sort of like take or like what they want to change or what they want to do, and it's never going to stay exactly the same. So this is probably the most similar it could be to its comic book counterpart.
So before we end this video, I'm just going to say this. I recommend to you reading the comics for a show or reading the manga for an anime. And if you think the anime looks good enough, you can go back to the parts that you liked in the manga and just watch the anime for where you like them. I think reading the manga is always superior.
I agree 9 times out of 10. If we're talking strictly what's adapted better in terms of manga to animation, usually a fight in a shonen manga will be incomprehensible if it's drawn in a manga. But when you watch it in the anime, it's like, oh, I know what's happening. I think the best example of this is JJK or Chainsaw Man. I read Chainsaw Man and I'm like, what the fuck is even happening? And then I watched the anime. I'm like, I don't even remember this part. I don't even know what the fuck this is. But I read it, and it's super like, they have to draw. They need a comic or a chapter once a week, and they're just like rushing out these like no nonsense drawings or whatever. They don't really put too much effort into it, obviously, and they're super like loose with their line work. So it's sort of hard to tell what's happening. But I would agree that even with that said, the manga pacing, to be able to read at your own pace, is incredible. And it's just like, why would you ever waste 10 hours of your day watching a show when you can read it in 2 hours? It doesn't really make a lot of sense when you're consuming the same amount of information.
Yeah, especially because most anime don't add anime original stuff. They just straight up adapt it. But if there's anime originals,
just extend stuff. They usually just add filler.
Yes.
It's never anything important that they add. They just extend the watch time so they can hit their deadlines and make enough money to keep creating more shows.
All right. Thank you for listening to our opinions about animation. And hopefully we'll see you in the next video.
Bye-bye.
Might as well give up. I'm Vincent. I'm Vincent. Oh, I'm invincible.